I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and we see you. So you
And
can start your
I'm delighted to
presentation.
be here to present a short discussion of the demographic and economic underpinnings of social change in post-industrial cities. So, beginning, the world is going through a massive demographic transition. And this is particularly present in the countries of Eastern Europe, as well as in the developed world generally. And what we see in Poland, for example, this is a good example of a country in transition, where over the coming decades, there will be a dramatic shift in the population and a dramatic decline in the population. And in fact, throughout Eastern and Central Europe, the population is declining at a rapid pace and will continue to do so over the coming decades. And this reflects primarily the very low reproduction rates of the population, as well as the relatively low levels of immigration. And a principal factor here is that as the population declines, the population pyramid shifts, the number of children is smaller, but the number of people of post-working age will rise significantly to the point where it will approach the number of people of working age. This is clearly going to have significant implications. The second factor, in addition to population decline, that is particularly significant is that of migration. And you can see there are significant variations within each city, each country rather, in terms of how the population is redistributing. And this has particular implications for post-industrial cities. If we look at the cities in Poland of over 200,000 population, you can see the great majority are losing population, but a few are gaining. And if we look at Bulgaria, which is a country where the population is declining faster than in Poland, what is noticeable is that the population declines, while greatest in the rural areas, are extremely pronounced in all cities except for the capital, Sofia, which is the only city in Bulgaria seeing significant population growth. And that is a very common phenomenon as peripheral cities are losing population relative to the center. And this is part of a very complex pattern of both internal and international migration. And while this requires a great deal more study than I believe has been done up to this point, what you have within each country is a series of population shifts from rural, small city, large city, suburban growth outside major cities, as well as smaller cities, all affecting the demographic dynamics of the post-industrial city. And of course, these are all layered on top of very significant trends of international migration. In the case of many Eastern European countries, especially after they're joining the EU, there's significant out-migration. In a country like the United States, where the reproduction rate is also quite low, immigration is gradually becoming the principal source of population growth. And in fact, in my projections, after roughly 2028 or 2029, immigration will become the sole source of population growth in the United States. So migratory patterns are another critical factor affecting cities in all developed countries. And what is particularly significant is that the patterns are sorting out into what can clearly be defined as winners and losers from an economic standpoint. And if we look again at Bulgaria, for example, excuse me, if you look at this map shows GDP per capita by region. And what is noticeable is the extraordinary degree of variation. In the capital region of Sofia, GDP is 4 times the level that it is in the regions of Vidin and other southern and central regions. So again, what we see happening is a concentration of economic assets and social assets in a small number of cities that tend to be distinguished on the basis of a series of what might be characterized as post-industrial assets. And among those are concentration of higher education functions, concentration of healthcare functions, concentration of the central functions of government, business, and finance, particular attractions, which can be cultural, historic, artistic, visual, natural environments such as lakes or rivers, and finally, size. It is clear that size and the ability to aggregate a critical mass of activities and attractions is absolutely central to this. So, for example, a major international research university has an economic impact that dwarfs the effect of a smaller, localized university or other higher educational institution. So size is critically important. And the implications of these changes are particularly significant. First, this graph shows the percentage of people in the age group 25 to 34 who have completed a tertiary degree, a bachelor or higher degree, and the per capita income of the same city. And what we have found is in the United States, at least, and it would be very interesting to see if this holds in other countries, there is a almost one-to-one relationship between the percentage of young people with a tertiary degree and the economic strength as measured in this case, in per capita income of the city. So in other words, the ability of the city to retain and attract this particular subset of young people with higher education and sophisticated skills becomes a critical factor in the ability of the city to grow and prosper economically. And so what we see, again, very much in the United States, and I believe also in many European centers, is a process of talent migration. And this becomes, again, critical in terms of the fortunes of post-industrial cities. Are they in-migrating centers of talent, or are they out-migrating centers of talent? And this is, again, an important part of the post-industrial future. So in terms of the social implications of these changes, I would like to highlight a few key factors. The first one is the implications of the aging of the population and the disparity between the types of facilities and services that cities now provide and what they are going to need in the future. Secondly, because of the shift in age population, the working age population will become significantly smaller, which again has powerful implications for the local economy. Now, as well as the needs for workforce in terms of healthcare and elder care that are generated by the changing demographics. This, depending on the nature of the municipal financial system in different countries, this could have a significant effect on the ability of local government to finance services, as well as some people have speculated that an older population may become a more conservative population politically as well as culturally. Then again, elderly people can be an asset. I mean, environmentalists have pointed to the idea that an aging population may utilize less energy, maybe more efficient from an environmental standpoint. That I think is somewhat speculative, but I think the aging of society is going to change the dynamics of urban life in older and post-industrial cities in ways that we have not yet fully anticipated. A second issue is the increasing polarization of society, both between poor regions and wealthy regions, between growing cities and shrinking cities, and within cities, because a new economy based on healthcare, higher education, and governmental business functions may well exclude large parts of the population, especially in cities which historically had a large industrial workforce. So this is particularly pronounced again in American post-industrial cities like Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, and I believe is part of a much wider international phenomenon. And then finally, I'll mention the effects of population loss in themselves are going to change the dynamics, both physical and social and economic, of post-industrial cities. And I think I'll point to 4 broad potential effects. One, of course, is simply the direct effect of the presence of increasing numbers of vacant properties, abandoned homes, abandoned buildings, often with little or no credible economic use. Secondly, the fiscal implications of increasing vacancy and abandonment. Properties that will not be paying taxes, properties that will cost significant amounts for local governments to police, to secure, and so forth. This is already, again, a major problem in many United States cities. A third issue is the question of excess infrastructure. Maintaining a complex system of infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, transit, and so forth, with a shrinking population dispersed over the existing area of the municipality, is likely to create problems. On the other hand, there are no simple solutions to excess infrastructure because, of course, as the population shrinks, it is not shrinking in an efficient fashion. And then finally, what are the cultural and social implications of living in a shrinking city with increasing vacancy, increasing abandonment? Does this affect how people perceive the city, how people perceive the city's future, their own future? Does it tend to create a cycle in which shrinkage is likely to foster further outmigration, which will trigger still further shrinkage? And can that be corrected in some fashion? So I think, without suggesting that demography and economics are destiny in terms of post-industrial cities, I think their effects are extraordinarily powerful, both today and over the next few decades. And I think it will be very productive for this conference to explore those effects and try to grapple with the future of post-industrial cities. So thank you for your attention.